Chapter 1325. Die to prove innocence. Yin Xiao still looked furious, but his expression turned into astonishment. He stammered. What did you say? Who wants to harm his honor here? The faces of the young man named Wei Jianxing and Uncle Chiu also became extremely solemn. Wei Jianxing said solemnly, What do you mean by that? Hushi glanced at everyone present with a dark, flickering gaze. The 10 days period, I said, is to let his honor's body and illness be in the best condition first. Originally, his honor's condition was already very stable. I'm preparing to do the operation in the next few days. In this way, the success rate of the operation can also be improved by 20 to 30%. But why would someone make his honor take medicinal pills that suppress the pain against my orders? Don't you know that his honor's illness will only get worse when you suppressed it even more? Hushi's words involved a lot of strange nouns. Uncle Chiu and others didn't quite understand them, but they understood the general meaning. Almost all of them turned their attention on Dr. Min. Wei Jianxing said solemnly, Dr. Min, when Shi was away, you prepared all the medicines for his honor, right? Dr. Min's face was full of panic, and he shook his head in terror. I didn't harm his honor. It's Dr. Liu. Dr. Liu came to see his honor yesterday. Before leaving, he gave me a bottle of medicinal pills, saying that it can relieve his honor's condition, so I must let his honor take them. Uncle Chiu said angrily, Who told you to give Lu Shuyang's medicine to his honor without authorization? Dr. Min fell to his knees on the ground with a thud and said with tears, His honor's previous illness was taken care of by Dr. Liu, and only Dr. Liu can relieve his honor's pain. I just heard from Dr. Liu that if his honor does not take it, his condition will worsen immediately. I don't know that there will be a conflict between Dr. Liu and Shi Yu's diagnosis. If you want to accuse me that I want to harm his honor, I would rather die to prove my innocence. As he said that, he suddenly took out a dagger and was about to insert it into his heart. Uncle Chiu and the others were startled, and the person closest to Dr. Min waved his hand and flicked away the dagger. Yin Xiao also frowned. Dr. Min has been with his honor for so many years, so he will not harm his honor on purpose. It's all on Lu Shuyang. He is so cunning and sinister that even Dr. Min is used by him. It's also our fault that we didn't tell Dr. Min about the ill intentions of Lu Shuyang. Dr. Min burst into tears, and he kept repeating his loyalty. His face was indescribably miserable and pitiful. Uncle Chiu and others also didn't believe that Dr. Min would really betray his honor. They could only blame themselves for not reminding Dr. Min of Lu Shuyang's sinister mind. Uncle Chiu frowned and looked at Hushi nervously. Then what should we do now? Can his honor still be saved? Hushi frowned and said, There is no other way but to perform the surgery immediately. However, because of the condition of the illness, his honor's condition is very critical. I don't know how much success rate is the surgery now. Uncle Chiu and the others were really regretful. Obviously, Shi Yu had told them that the success rate was high enough, but because of their carelessness, his honor was in danger again. Dr. Min even knelt on the ground with guilt and kept kowtowing. Even blood came from his forehead. But this way, no one doubted that Dr. Min was deliberately harming his honor. There was no time to delay. Fortunately, the room that served as the operating room had already been prepared. Chapter 1326. Start surgery. There were crystal stones with the strongest brightness everywhere. Especially the crystal stones on the operating table were as bright as modern incandescent lamps. After several days of cleaning and maintenance in the operating room, it was almost completely sterile. After all, although people in this world were physically strong, a person was often the weakest during an operation. What if he was infected? The chief surgeon of the operation was of course Hushi, and there were 3 assistants, namely Nangongyu, Wei Jianxing, and Dr. Min. Hushi originally only wanted to take Nangongyu, but the craniotomy, as the name suggests, was to cut open his honor's head. This kind of operation sounded incredible, so Wei Jianxing and the others couldn't rest assured to let Hushi do that to his honor. Wei Jianxing was the one who let Hushi come to the Beijing pavilion when she first visited. He looked the youngest among the subordinates, only about 30 years old, but his cultivation was the highest among all. He had a calm and reserved aura. Even if he was really worried about his honor's disease, he still didn't panic. Dr. Min was the best doctor with medical skills around the middle-aged man. Uncle Chiu and others were afraid that if Hushi's operation failed, Dr. Min might be able to save his honor's life. Uncle Chiu and the others watched curiously as Hushi changed into a strange dark green dress with narrow sleeves, and she covered her face with a towel, revealing only a pair of beautiful phoenix eyes. Even Wei Jianxing and others were instructed by her to change into the same attire. Uncle Chiu and the others wanted to go in and take another look at his honor, but they were stopped by Hushi. If you hope that his honor can successfully survive the operation, then remember that in the next 2 hours, no one is allowed to disturb us. Don't allow anyone to enter this operating room. If this operation fails or is interrupted, then even if God comes, he will not be able to save his honor. After speaking, without waiting for Uncle Chiu and others to answer, she quickly closed the door of the operating room. As soon as the door was closed, Hushi immediately took out a series of surgical tools from the void. Wei Jianxing and Dr. Min were stunned by the delicate and small surgical equipment. Even Nan Gongyu was full of curiosity. Wei Jianxing picked up a scalpel and exclaimed, "What material is this made of? It doesn't seem to have any spiritual power, nor is it carved with runes, but the edge is extremely sharp." Hee. Stainless steel, tungsten steel. Of course, you haven't seen this kind of thing. This set of surgical tools was brought by Hushi and stored in spirit spring water together with the silver needles. They were not actually suitable to be used in the Miluo continent. Hushi had always wanted to use the rare materials here to create a new set, but she didn't know how to forge nor did she find the suitable materials, so she still couldn't do it yet. Holding a scalpel, Hushi glanced at Wei Jianxing, Dr. Min and finally at the middle-aged man who had been anesthetized before saying solemnly, "Start the operation." In the operating room, under Hushi's skilled operation and explanation, the operation was carried out in an orderly manner. Wei Jianxing and Dr. Min also gradually became calm. She was different from other doctors. When other doctors were treating, they would do everything possible to hide their own treatment methods, for fear that their unique skills would be spied on by others. However, Shi explained to them the procedure of the operation and the reasons for each operation step. Chapter 1327. Spying as time passed. If Wei Jianxing only had 30% of confidence in Shi Yu at the beginning, now seeing her skillful actions and calm expression, his confidence in her had increased to 80%. He even believed that if anyone in this world could cure his honor, it would be the young man in front of him. Wei Jianxing was relieved, but the people waiting outside the operating room were anxious. It was at this time that news of Lu Shuyang's visit came from outside the palace. Uncle Chiu and the others looked at each other and saw the coldness and alertness in the other's eyes. Lu Shuyang was still wearing a scholar gown. He had a gentle and amiable smile, and his eyes were full of compassionate kindness and tolerance. Such a person would make the patient want to be close and trust at first meet. As soon as he came in, he bowed slightly toward Uncle Chiu and said, "Elder Chiu, is his honor here?" Uncle Chiu narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "His honor is resting. Do you have anything?" Lu Shuyang didn't seem to notice Uncle Chiu's indifference and alertness at all. He just shook his head and sighed. "I'm an incompetent person. I have been treating his honor for several years, but I still can't completely relieve his honor's pain. I have been working day and night these few days without sleep to find a way to treat his honor. Now, I finally have some solutions. So, I came to report his honor immediately." However, none of the people in front showed the excited look he expected. Yin Xiao, who couldn't hide his feelings the most, even sneered, "Was the medicinal pills you gave to Dr. Min the so-called solution to treat his honor?" Lu Shuyang's heart thumped for a moment. He looked around and found that only 7 guardians of Venerable Huiyu were in front of him. Wei Jianxing, the one with the highest cultivation and the most careful, was not there. Not even Dr. Min. Moreover, these people should have seen that Venerable Huiyu will not live for a few days. But there is not a bit of worry on their faces. Why is that? Is it really possible that Shiyu can cure Venerable Huiyu? No, this is impossible. Lu Shuyang thought so in his mind. He showed a puzzled expression. "I gave Dr. Min medicinal pills, but they were only used to relieve his honor's pain, and his honor has been taking them. I heard that you have asked a young man named Shiyu to treat his honor, but he is only a 17-years-old young man. He doesn't even have a doctor rank. Do you really think he can treat his honor instead of me?" Uncle Chiu and the others frowned and did not speak. Although they didn't believe that Shiyu's medical skills would be higher than Lu Shuyang, since his honor said that Lu Shuyang was untrustworthy, they wouldn't believe in him at all. A cold light flashed in Lu Shuyang's eyes, and he stepped forward and said, "Could it be that Shiyu is treating his honor now? Absurd. This is so absurd. I have already figured out a way to save his honor, but if Shiyu worsens his honor's illness, then no one can save him anymore. Bring me to Shiyu now." Uncle Chiu sneered and waved. "No need. The person who trusts and agrees to Shiyu's treatment plan is his honor. We can't make the decision. Dr. Lu, please go back." Lu Shuyang's eyes flashed again, and a bad premonition filled his heart. However, this time, he didn't say anything more, but he quickly left the Beijing Pavilion and entered the Mojing Pavilion. As soon as he entered the Mojing Pavilion, he saw the man wearing the golden mask. He hurriedly walked up and bowed. "Sir, I have an ominous premonition. Maybe Shiyu really has some ancient formula in his hand that can cure Venerable Huiyu's illness." Chapter 1328. Dire Straits. What? The masked man stood up abruptly, staring at Lu Shuyang like a falcon. Lu Shuyang lowered his eyes and said, "Although I believe that Venerable Huiyu will die, just in case, we can't just passively wait. In addition, I also found out that Shiyu's treatment plan seems to take a long time and cannot be interrupted." The masked man was stunned for a moment, then he made a sinister smile. "Don't worry, we don't have to do anything. Someone is already impatient to do it for us. This is the best opportunity to get rid of Venerable Huiyu." As soon as he said, Lu Shuyang heard the sound of fierce fighting coming from the direction of the Beijing Pavilion. He sneered with his eyes flickering. Hemostatic forceps. Gauze. Press this wound for me. Wei Jianxing was also well informed, but when he saw his honor's head was opened up, he was horrified by the image. Dr. Min's face was even more pale. He fell to the side, unable to get up for a long time. If Hushi hadn't given them medicine beforehand, Dr. Min would have vomited by now. The only assistant who remained calm from beginning to end was probably Nangongyu. He was even able to get it just right, and he gently reached out to wipe the sweat off Hushi's face. He looked at the man on the operating table with an indifferent gaze, but his eyes on Hushi were gentle. Wei Jianxing wiped the sweat from his forehead and noticed that his hand holding the hemostat was shaking. The bloody unknown object that was still beating slightly made his stomach churn for a while. At this moment, a violent vibration came. The operating table and even the entire palace swayed slightly. If Hushi hadn't been quick-witted, the scalpel would have directly cut off his honor's cranial nerve. Hushi raised her head and frowned. "What's going on?" Wei Jianxing also had a dignified expression, and there was a killing intent in his eyes. "Shiyu, you focus on the operation. I'll go and check it out." Outside the palace of the Beijing Pavilion, it was now in dire straits. In the air above the Beijing Pavilion, a man wearing a dark red robe with long hair looked down arrogantly. Behind the red-robed man, there were more than a dozen martial artists, each of whom was at the peak of the nascent soul stage. The phantom barrier that separated the Beijing Pavilion and the Mojing Pavilion had been removed at this time. The golden masked man, Elder Fei, and the others were standing opposite, watching the liveliness with ease. When Wei Jianxing rushed over, Yin Xiao was yelling at the golden masked man. "Golden Wolf, what are you doing? Have you forgotten that we made an agreement not to attack at will in the Miracle Healer Academy?" The masked man, called the Golden Wolf, put his hands around his chest and half smiled. "Yeah, so we didn't do anything, right? It's just that Xue Xia and the others came over and said they want our Mojing Pavilion's help to visit Venerable Huiyu. We can't really refuse them, right? You motherfucker bullshit." Yin Xiao was furious. "You despicable villains. When his honor comes out, he will definitely tear you all to pieces." The red-robed man in the sky laughed. "It also depends on whether his honor can come out alive." Chapter 1329. Shaky. With that said, The red-robed man raised his flying sword and slashed it down. The palace was shaking together with the enchantment. Wei Jianxing was startled. He knew better than anyone that Shiyu could not be disturbed during the operation. He took a step forward, rose up, and launched a long blade. The red-robed man had just launched the second strike. Their attacks collided. Then, it was obvious that Wei Jianxing was weaker. His figure trembled in the air. Then he was forced back to the ground. The red-robed man let out a wild laugh. Wei Jianxing, look at you now. What's the matter? Weren't you very arrogant before? Why is your attack now like tickling me? You can't even block 30% of my power. Ha ha ha. Today will be the end of you. Wei Jianxing's face was ashen. He glared fiercely at the people in the sky. Xue Sha, what do you want? Have you forgotten our Siamese continent's rule that we can't act recklessly in the lower realm? Nothing else, Xue Sha said with a wicked smile. It's just that His Honor heard that Venerable Hui Yu is still recovering here, so His Honor asks me to greet him. Who knew you would be so disrespectful, so I'll have to use my own way. Wei Jianxing gritted his teeth and said, Xue Sha, don't be too arrogant. Do you really think we are afraid of you? Ha ha ha. Xue Sha arrogantly raised his head and laughed. His eyes were full of malice. Hui Yu, that old fool, is always so high-sounding and full of morals. When coming to the lower realm, he used the enchantment to suppress your cultivation to the nascent soul stage. Now you can't even fight against one of my subordinates, and you still dare to talk shit with at me. Ha ha ha. Wei Jianxing, I really wanted this day to come for so long. I remembered how arrogant you were when you said you were going to abolish me. Now you can only hide in there like a turtle. As Xue Sha said, he waved his hand and commanded, break this barrier now. When that old Hui Yu is dead, all the treasures will be yours. Yes, my lord. Xue Sha's subordinates were overjoyed when they heard the words. They immediately attacked the barrier with greedy eyes. With Xue Sha's strong attack, cracks began to appear on the barrier above the Beijing Pavilion. However, Wei Jianxing and others were suppressed by enchantment, so they couldn't defend with the power of the nascent soul stage at all. If they wanted to dispel this enchantment, only Venerable Hui Yu could do it. Otherwise, if they forcibly dispel the enchantment, they will be severely recoiled. If it was a minor case, their cultivation would drop by 1 level. If it was serious, their meridians would break and their dantians would be damaged. At this time, in the operating room, Hashi frowned anxiously. Because of the continuous vibration and turbulence of the palace, she could not feel at ease performing the operation at all. It was the most delicate brain surgery. The slightest mistake would turn His Honor into a dumb person. The longer the delay, the lower the success rate of the surgery. Seeing the worry in Hashi's eyes, Nangongyu turned to look outside. Sheer, how long do you need for the operation? About half an hour. Nangongyu nodded and said in a light voice, I'll go out and see. You focus on the operation. With that said, Nangongyu quickly came outside. At this moment, Xue Sha and his subordinates had combined their attacks and launched a dazzling sword light at the barrier. In the Beijing Pavilion, Wei Jianxing and the others, who were supporting the barrier, were pale and shaky. Chapter 1330. Tian Gang Array. If this fierce attack connects, the barrier of the Beijing Pavilion is bound to break. Yin Xiao and Uncle Chiu even wanted to dispel the enchantment in their bodies at all costs. Even if they became crippled, they would never allow His Honor to have any kind of accident. At this moment, a powerful spiritual power burst out from them, and it finally converged on the barrier that was about to burst. The Beijing Pavilion, which was still slightly shaking, had completely stabilized. Wei Jianxing and the others were all stunned for a while. Even Xue Sha and Midair looked at the man who suddenly appeared with surprise. Nangongyu's indifferent eyes swept across the crowd, and his aura belonged the aura of a superior. If you don't want your master to die, just do as I say. Uncle Chiu was shocked. This man came in together with Shiyu, but none of them noticed the existence of this man. They only treated him as the most ordinary manservant. This man would never be a servant at all. The power of the blow just now was at least the peak of the nascent soul stage, and it was no weaker than their power after being suppressed. However, They didn't remember such a powerful elder in Miracle Healer Academy at all. Wei Jianqing took a step forward and said, "May I ask who Sir is?" Nan Gongyu sneered. He said with an indescribable indifference and majesty, "You don't need to know who I'm. If it wasn't for Shi Yu trying to save your master, I wouldn't care about helping you guys at all. You just need to answer me, listen or not." Uncle Chiu, Wei Jianqing and the others looked at each other with anger in their eyes. Uncle Chiu even cursed in his mind. The person Shi Yu brought is really just like him, arrogant and bad-tempered. However, now that they were in desperation, more importantly, his honor was at the juncture of life and death. They couldn't think of any other way to protect his honor other than trusting the man in front. Wei Jianqing was the first to calm down and said solemnly, "We listen to you. Please tell us what to do." Nan Gongyu's expression didn't change. He transfigured a dark red long sword in his hand and swung toward the barrier above. Wherever the sword aura went, it accurately voided the next wave of attack of Shui Sha. Afterward, he pointed his sword to somewhere in the barrier and said indifferently, "You, channel spiritual power into this position of the barrier." Immediately afterward, he pointed to another place and said to Yin Shao, "You, replenish the spiritual power of this position." Yin Shao muttered with confusion, "What's the use of this? With our current spiritual power, we can't stop Shui Sha's next attack." But he was just muttering in his mind. Yin Shao still did according to Nan Gongyu's instructions. After a while, Nan Gongyu had already pointed to 8 positions and let them channel spiritual power. He stood at the center of the barrier and drew an unknown symbol. After the symbol was formed, it turned into a golden light that suddenly rushed to the top of the barrier. The next moment, a golden light lit up on the originally transparent and insubstantial barrier, and a complicated pattern appeared in the air. If they looked closely, they would see 9 exceptionally bright dots in this intricate pattern, and they seemed to contain powerful energy. Wei Qingyuan, who was on the side, saw this complicated pattern. Then he said in shock, "Tiangang Array. How is it possible? It really is Tiangang Array." Chapter 1331. Metal and Wei Qingyuan's words confused many people, but people like Wei Jianqing and Uncle Chiu showed a look of astonishment. Tiangang Array only existed in the legend. It belonged to the array hundreds of millions of years ago. This young man in front was only in his 20s, yet he could set up a Tiangang Array, which was incredible. However, these people didn't know how shocked Wei Qingyuan was, because many people had never heard of the Tiangang Array. They only knew that this array powerful and ancient, but few people know that the most difficult thing about Tiangang Array was not the array, but the final symbol that activated the array. The process was extremely dangerous. The use of spiritual power in the drawing of the symbol. As long as there was a slight mistake, the array would collapse. A terrifying explosion would occur that stretches for thousands of miles. But this person set up the Tiangang Array like he was just breathing. He didn't look hesitant and nervous at all. Who is this person? Shui Sha in the air also saw the strange runes appearing above the Beijing pavilion. He was surprised too. He knew all of Venerable Hui Yu's subordinates, but he had never seen this inconspicuous young man who suddenly appeared. Moreover, Shui Sha could only see that this man was only at the peak of the nascent soul stage, but he felt that this man was shrouded in a mist, making him unable to see it clearly. It was this person who stabilized the barrier that was about to collapse. Shui Sha looked down at Nan Gongyu coldly and said solemnly, "Boy, who are you? Who told you to meddle in our business?" Nan Gongyu was busy strengthening Tiangang Array, so he didn't even bother looking at Shui Sha. Shui Sha was infuriated in the air. He glared at Nan Gongyu. "Court death. Just a mere nascent soul stage. How dare you? I will crush your bone into ashes, and I'll see if you will still be arrogant by then." As he spoke, the sword in his hand, which was originally only 2 feet long, suddenly became 10 feet long. The giant sword floated in the air, emitting a sinister glow. Shui Sha folded his hands together, forming a symbol. Then the symbol shot a fireball at the giant sword. Shui Sha pointed at the barrier of the Beijing pavilion and shouted fiercely, "Break!" In an instant, the loud whistling sound came as the giant fireball was launched at the barrier. It was about to engulf the Beijing pavilion in the next moment. Even though Wei Qingyuan, Wei Jianqing and the others were full of confidence in Tian Array just now, they still felt the slightest fear when they saw this overwhelming fire. That was endless black flame, the flame that could burn everything in the world. Even the spiritual power of the barrier would be devoured little by little. Venerable and Yi burned the souls of so many people with this endless black flame, terrifying countless people. Unexpectedly, he actually gave this endless black flame to his subordinate Xue Sha. Tian Array, could it really stop this endless black flame? In the operating room. When the shaking stopped, everything was calm and orderly again. While exploring the lesions in the middle-aged man's brain with divine sense, Hashi slowly removed the lesion and washed it with diluted spirit spring water. Chapter 1332. Spy. There was a simple hourglass next to the operating table, and the fine sand in the hourglass flowed bit by bit as time passed. Hashi's eyes fixed on the comatose patient, so he didn't see Dr. Min, who was paralyzed by the fear and vomiting, slowly stood up. At this moment, there was no fear on his face, but a malicious intent. He also had a dagger with an emerald luster in his hand. This dagger was smeared with a deadly poison. Just piercing the skin a little bit could kill someone completely. Dr. Min approached the Hashi, who was concentrating on the operation step by step. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He didn't dare to do it when Wei Jianqing was there, and he didn't think it was the best time before that manservant had left. Having been by Venerable Hui Yu's side for so many years, he had only one chance to complete the mission given by his master. That was to put Venerable Hui Yu to death completely. Now, there are only Shi Yu and Venerable Hui Yu left in this room. As long as he killed Shi Yu, Venerable Hui Yu would surely die. Thinking of this, Dr. Min's eyes flashed with fiery excitement, and his dagger was getting closer and closer to Shi Yu's back. Die for me. A scream resounded in Dr. Min's heart. His face suddenly turned hideous, and the knife in his hand stabbed the boy in front of him fiercely. Poochie. That was the sound of the dagger piercing into the flesh. A burst of ecstasy surged in Dr. Min's heart, but before he could open his mouth to laugh, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his body. Afterward, he looked at his hand in horror. He had already attacked Shi Yu's back with a knife. He should have succeeded. But the fact was, his knife was still held in midair, and there were purple vines wrapped around his hand. Pain, severe pain, spread from his back to his whole body. Then, he heard the voice of a young little girl behind him. If you want to disturb the young lady during her surgery, you must also ask us whether we agree or not. Dr. Min's eyes were full of astonishment. He turned to look back with difficulty. What caught his eye were a few young spiritual pets. There was a pink pig, a black little dragon, a silver little fox, and a silly ugly cow. These seemingly inconspicuous spiritual pets, if he encountered them at a usual day, he would not care about them at all. But at this moment, he saw unconcealed ridicule and killing intent in the eyes of these little spiritual pets. You! Dr. Min turned around in pain and looked at the young man who was still concentrating on the operation not far away. His face distorted again because of the pain and unwillingness. Shi Yu, you have been guarding me for a long time? What responded to him was Shi Yu's indifferent voice. Little Purple, clean up this person. This is a sterile operating room. Don't let him contaminate this place. The purple vines that were originally wrapped around Dr. Min moved cheerfully. All the vines rose into the sky, wrapping Dr. Min with a terrified face. Dr. Min shouted sharply, Shi Yu, I have been following his honor for many years. If you kill me like this, his honor will not let you go. Ah! The screams echoed in the empty room, causing several little guys to cover their ears in disgust. Chapter 1333. Surgery successful. Little Golden Dragon even complained, Little Purple, stop playing and swallow this guy. Don't disturb boss for surgery. Purple Abyss Vine shook. This time, she wrapped Dr. Min into a silkworm cocoon, showing no mercy. Then came the creepy crackling sounds from the cocoon. After about 5 minutes, there was no more Dr. Min in the world. There was only a faint smell of blood and clothes scattered all over the room. The little guys laughed and went back to Hushy's void hand in hand. And Hushy's surgery was gradually coming to an end. While doing the stitching, she glanced back at the clothes scattered on the ground. Hushy half smiled. I'm so sorry to kill one of your subordinates. I heard that the old man has been with you for decades. You won't blame me, will you? The next moment, a man's voice with a leisurely smile sounded in the empty room. Little girl, my life is still in your hands. What do you think? Hushy raised her head and smiled toward an empty space. In that space, the phantom of a person was floating. It was the middle-aged man who was undergoing surgery. The movements in Hushy's hands did not stop for a moment, but a sullen smile appeared on her face. I thought that if I can't cure your brain disease, you will really die. It turns out that you still have such a backup plan. What should I say? Is it really older and wiser? The middle-aged man in the space, who was Venerable Huiyu, touched his chin and looked at her meaningfully. There was a deep smile in his eyes. Little girl, I didn't expect that there would be someone in this world who can see the soul with the naked eye. Even your little lover, whose identity and strength are unfathomable, didn't see my soul leaving the body. I didn't expect you to be able to see it. Hushy's face turned red when she heard that little lover, and her movements also paused slightly. Venerable Huiyu smiled lowly and continued, although my soul can exit my body and be reborn, the conditions required are extremely harsh. My strength will also be greatly reduced, and I may no longer be able to control the power at hand. So, if possible, of course I hope that I can continue to live in this body. Little girl, thank you for keeping it a secret for me. Hushy smiled lightly. I'm just not interested in other people's secrets. As she spoke, she sutured the last wood, and a full head reappeared before her eyes. Although there were hideous scars and all the hair was shaved, it was indeed a complete brain. Venerable Huiyi in the air took a deep breath. He looked at his body with trembling excitement. Is the surgery over? I recovered? I can feel my aura circulating smoothly in my brain. Hushy let out a long sigh of relief, only to feel that her hands and feet were soft. She almost fell to the ground. Such a major surgery was really not done by a person. However, it was finally over. Hushy smirked and said slowly, the surgery is successful. In the Beijing pavilion. The huge long sword with whistling black flames was about to hit. Many people in the barrier closed their eyes in horror. Bang! The black flames hit the barrier. The terrifying energy collision emitted a dazzling light. Chapter 1334. Dead? Even the students of Miracle Healer Academy were attracted by the loud noise and light, and they gathered outside the barrier of the Beijing pavilion to check it out. Shui Sha manipulated his flying sword and the black flame. Feeling the black flame swallowing the energy, he revealed a cheerful smile. Endless black flame can swallow anything. Just a moment later, the Beijing pavilion will be reduced to ashes. And that old fool Hui will also become a pile of dead bones. However, Shui Sha's laughter just lasted for a few seconds, then he was startled. The black flame was swallowing the spiritual power slowly on the barrier of the Beijing pavilion. But what was shocking was that the speed of this devouring was far less fast than Shui Sha imagined. After a closer look, one would find that every time the black flame devoured part of the spiritual power of the barrier, the 9 runes would flash repeatedly. Immediately afterward, all the spiritual power and energy would converge toward the runes, and the energy of the barrier was finally replenished. Wei Chengyuan's face was full of shock and admiration. There was fascination in his eyes. He mumbled, "So this is Tiangang Array. This is Tiangang Array. Take the spirit of heaven and earth, gather the essence of all things, and is inexhaustible. The Tiangang aura will last forever." Wei Jianqing and others were overjoyed when they saw this, and they increased the spiritual power output in their hands again. Although the Beijing Pavilion's barrier was still being worn, it was far below the original speed and below their tolerance range. And Venerable Huiyu's surgery had been going on for more than an hour. As long as they persisted a little longer, his honor would be able to come out. By the time, what should they be afraid of? Wei Jianxing and others were spirited, but Xue Sha was full of disbelief. He didn't believe that someone in this mere Miluo continent could resist the devouring ability of endless black flame. What Tiangang array? I have never even heard of it. How can it be so powerful? Xue Sha stared at Nangongyu below, raised his voice and shouted sharply again. Who are you exactly? Do you know who I'm? Go against us. You know what will happen to you? This time, Nangongyu finally raised his head. He glanced at Xue Sha casually and sneered. I never care about the identity of the dead. Dead? Xue Sha's face was distorted. At this moment, compared to Wei Jianxing, he suddenly wanted to smash this ignorant boy into 10,000 pieces. Do you think you can be safe by hiding in a shitty array? Just wait. I'll break your turtle shell now, so you can die in the most horrible way. Saying that, Xue Sha's eyes became red. He bit his tongue and spat blood at the giant sword from a distance. The black flames burned even wilder after contacting the blood on the tip of Xue Sha's tongue. The energy of the barrier, which wasn't exhausted much, also began to drain away frantically. Xue Sha's face turned pale, and the blood on the tip of one's tongue was the essence of a person. He just spouted so much, which was equivalent to losing a lot of his cultivation. In addition to this endless black flame, with his current cultivation, he could control it. Therefore, in order to kill Venerable Huiyu, he had paid a big price. But in any case, he must complete the mission by Venerable and Yi, and he must also smash all the scumbags below to ashes in order to relieve the hatred in his heart. Poof! Chapter 1335. Never give up. As the barrier's energy was swallowed up by the black flames, someone in the Beijing pavilion finally couldn't hold it back and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, even though their faces were pale and their dantians were almost drained, they still held on desperately, because they knew that if they backed off, their master's life would be threatened. Wei Jianxing's mouth also began to overflow with blood, but he gritted his teeth tightly and said solemnly, 15 minutes, at most 15 minutes, Shi will be able to save his honor. We must hold on. In fact, Wei Jianxing didn't even know if Shi Yu's surgery would be successful or not, and when exactly his honor would come out. However, they all knew that they couldn't retreat. Even if they were going to die, Nangongyu's eyes swept across the few people who were exhausted, and the black spiritual power was absorbed back into his fingertips. He was hesitating whether to use the dark spiritual power, although if he could use the dark spiritual power to devour the endless black flame, this would expose his identity. By then, it would be troublesome for him to stay in the Miracle Healer Academy to protect Sheer. Moreover, this would also lead to a series of troubles. Suddenly, Nangongyu sensed something and looked back with a gentle and doting smile on his face. At the same time, someone finally couldn't hold it any longer and passed out. Xue Sha and his men let out a cheer and swarmed toward the opening of the barrier. Xue Sha laughed wildly. Kill all these scums. Wei Jianxing and the others were full of despair. Now that their spiritual power was exhausted one by one, even if they wanted to forcibly dispel the seal in them, they could no longer do it. Are we really going to die here? Is his honor really doomed? Seeing that Xue Sha's long sword wrapped in black flames was about to hit them, Wei Jianxing and the others closed their eyes in despair. But the next moment, they felt a familiar aura coming toward them. If Xue Sha's black flames could devour everything, then this aura was the cold that froze everything, but the cold was mixed with vitality. The drained dantians of Wei Jianxing and others were fully replenished instantly. The meridians that were originally painful due to the exhaustion of spiritual power were also healed under the comfort of this spiritual power. Wei Jianxing suddenly opened his eyes and looked behind him in disbelief. Everyone who fell on the ground turned around. Then they saw a man in a green robe and a crown on his head, slowly walking out of the palace. Wei Jianxing's eyes instantly became wet. He shouted in a hoarse voice, His Honor, are you healed? The sound of Wei Jianxing brought tears to the eyes of the 8 guardians of Venerable Huiyu. Yin Xiao, who had the most honest temperament, burst into tears on the spot. His Honor, it's great that you are still alive. Venerable Huiyu looked at their battered looks and the blood on their mouths, and his heart was filled with warmth and emotion. Although Dr. Min's betrayal disheartened him, these subordinates never left him when he was in the greatest danger. They even risked their lives to protect him. These people are the best. Chapter 1336. Die with no corpse. A soft smile appeared on Venerable Huiyu's face. He glanced at Wei Jianxing and others one by one. When he finally looked at Xue Sha, who looked sluggish and panicked, the soft smile turned into tyrannical cold malice. Xue Sha's subordinates were even more shocked when they saw Venerable Huiyu. They all trembled with fright. Suddenly, someone screamed in surprise and fled. Immediately, someone followed frantically, no longer caring about any orders and missions. Venerable Huiyu sneered and waved his hand. An icy aura condensed into tens of millions of sharp blades and flew toward the fleeing people. Xue Sha originally wanted to escape, but when he saw this person, his feet seemed to be petrified and he couldn't move. There was an overwhelming fear in his heart. The next moment, he did see a scene that made him terrified and desperate. Those of his subordinates wanted to escape, but they couldn't, of course. Venerable Huiyu's sharp blades hit them mercilessly, but Xue Sha didn't hear their screams. What he heard were the crackling sounds as the subordinates were turned into ice sculptures in an instant. In just a second, those ice sculptures shattered and turned into little ice fragments, floating in air. Their souls and corpses were deleted. Xue Sha only felt that the blood all over her body was cold. He couldn't even utter a word. His rigid gaze fell on Venerable Huiyu's face. His face was radiant and no longer had the pain and depression tormented by the illness. What remained was the majesty and power of the superior. Venerable Huiyu, he is healed. No, it's not. He even becomes stronger than ever. Xue Sha was completely despairing. He even felt that Venerable and Yi couldn't match him at all. However, how is this possible? Venerable Huiyu's illness was sentenced to death in the Siam continent long ago. How could anyone be able to cure him? Xue Sha retreated step by step. The hand behind his back secretly activated the random teleportation array, and he said with a trembling voice, "Venerable Huiyu, I'm just here to visit you on the order of Venerable and Yi. If you kill it, Venerable and Yi will definitely know. I believe you don't want to directly go hostile with Venerable and Yi so quickly, do you?" As he kept talking, the teleportation array hidden behind his back also quickly activated. Feeling the energy spread from the teleportation talisman, Xue Sha was overjoyed. His face showed a bit of a different expression. However, before Xue Sha's smile spread in his eyes, Venerable Huiyu sneered and waved his hand lightly. The next moment, Xue Sha had a terrified look on his face. His mouth was wide open, but before he could make a sound, his entire body had already burst open with a bang. There was not even a drop of blood. He was also turned into ice fragments. Everyone present was stunned by this scene. Xue Sha was at least at the early stage of the soul-splitting stage, but Venerable Huiyu could exterminate him within a second. The most shocking and horrifying of all were definitely the golden masked man and others in the Mojing Pavilion. They thought they would wait for the news of Venerable Huiyu's death, but who knew that he actually recovered? Elder Fei's eyes were filled with fear and joy. He looked coldly at Lu Shuyang, who had lost his soul, and sneered, "President Lu, didn't you say that Venerable Huiyu will definitely die? Didn't you say that she used medical skills or just so-so? What's going on now? Venerable Huiyu has not only recovered, but his cultivation is a little higher than before." Chapter 1337. Unreasonable, that's what you guarantee there is absolutely no one better than your medical skills in the Miluo continent? Lu Shuyang's face was pale. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he stared straight at the young man who was following behind Venerable Huiyu in the distance. The young man standing there had a beautiful and unparalleled face. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing could move him. Lu Shuyang couldn't suppress the flame of jealousy growing in his body. He is only a boy of 17 years old, but he even cured a terminal illness that I thought could not be cured. Such a talent, such an ability. Why don't they belong to me? The most unbearable thing for Lu Shuyang was that the golden masked man and others who originally valued him and believed in him also looked at him gloomily at this time, as if they were looking at a useless waste. The position that he had worked so hard to earn was completely ruined. Lu Shuyang gritted his teeth with hatred, but he forced himself to endure it. He put up a lonely and guilty look as he said, "I'm sorry to disappoint sir with my poor medical skills. But that Shiyu is young. It's impossible for him to have such superb medical skills. I wonder if he has some kind of treasure on him." The golden masked man's eyes flashed. His cold eyes swept over the young man behind Venerable Huiyu. Then he frowned. "Now that kid is favored by Huiyu. We can't touch him. However, we must find a way to get him to our side. If he doesn't want to, destroy him completely." Elder Fei, who was standing on the side, quickly bowed after hearing the words, "Yes, sir." Having said that, Venerable Huiyu looked over with sarcasm and coldness. Even the golden masked man felt intimidated against Venerable Huiyu like this. But he wasn't afraid. Venerable Huiyu had an agreement with his master that he would never attack them in the lower realm. It's just that Venerable Huiyu has recovered and now knows the truth, so he definitely won't let it go. I should hurry back and report this. Thinking of this, the golden masked man waved his hand to set up the barrier that isolated the two pavilions. When Wei Jinxing and the others saw them leave, they immediately said angrily, "His honor, do you just let these guys go? Especially that Lu Shuyang. He actually defected to their side and secretly harmed his honor. How can we allow such a scum to live?" Venerable Huiyu sneered, "Don't worry, as long as I'm healed. How much time do you think they have?" When everyone heard this, they were overjoyed. Uncle Chiu looked at Venerable Huiyu with tears and said excitedly, "His honor, are you really cured? Will your illness recur?" Venerable Huiyu smiled slightly and did not speak, but he looked at Hushi. Immediately afterward, everyone's eyes fell on Hushi. They stared at her with excitement and nervousness as if she didn't speak. They would open her mouth and dig the answer out of it. Hushi smiled slightly. There was no excitement on her face. The surgery is a success. There are no sequelae. "Ray, really?" Yin Xiao was the first to shout. His rough voice carried a sobbing tone. "Shiyu." No, miracle healer Shi. You mean that his honor will never be sick again? Will he live forever?" Hushi shrugged. "If he lives long enough, I think he can live forever." Chapter 1338. First, as soon as Hushi said this, everyone immediately cheered excitedly. Although they already knew the answer just now, they couldn't help but be ecstatic when it was confirmed at this moment. Uncle Chiu and the others even had red eyes and kept thanking Hushi. Yin Xiao shouted excitedly with his hoarse voice, "Ha ha ha, those scums were really so arrogant. Now it's good. Dare to plot against us? I will go and get rid of them when we return." Wei Jinxing suppressed his excitement and asked Venerable Huiyu, "His honor, now that your illness has recovered, are we going back to the Siam continent?" Venerable Huiyu nodded with a contemptuous smile on his face. "Of course, we have to go back. Maybe I'm away for so long that they forget about my existence. Hee, it's time to go back and clean up the Divine Moon Palace." With a wave of his hand, Wei Jinxing and the others lit up with a dazzling light. Immediately afterward, Hushi was surprised to find that the aura of these people had changed. Their bodies naturally exuded a strong coercion. Even Hushi was always calm. She couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Each of the 8 Venerable Huiyu's guards has the strength of the soul-splitting stage. Wei Jinxing, who has the highest cultivation, is close to the intermediate stage of the soul-splitting stage. Such strength can completely dominate the entire Miluo continent. Wei Jinxing and others had even more surprises on their faces, and the depression that was originally suppressed by Xue Sha and others was instantly swept away. The 8 knelt down and kowtowed to Venerable Huiyu. "Thanks, his honor." The other guards and servants in the Beijing pavilion shivered because of the sudden pressure. Their eyes revealed an instinctive fear. Even Wei Qingyuan had to force himself to calm down, so that he wouldn't lose his manner. The only person in the audience who was not affected was probably Nangongyu. Since Xue Sha was eliminated, He once again restrained his aura and stood quietly behind Hushi. He would grab her soft little hand from time to time and play gently. Even if Wei Jianxing and others recovered their strength, no one was aware of his existence. Venerable Hui Yu motioned for Wei Jianxing and others to get up, then he walked slowly to Hushi. His eyes swept around Nan Gongyu for a while before looking at Hushi again. Shi Yu, how can I thank you for your life-saving grace? Hushi frowned slightly. She thought of Wu Qi in a coma. If I ask Venerable Hui Yu to get back Wu Qi's wood vitality pearl or wood crystal, would it be feasible? Such thoughts swirled in her mind, but Hushi finally rejected them. Although Venerable Hui Yu is very powerful, it is not something that Elder Fei and the others can compete with, but from Venerable Hui Yu knowing that Lu Shuyang harmed him, but not being able to punish him at will, it seems that Elder Fei's side is not small. If I tell Venerable Hui Yu about Wu Qi's situation, what if Venerable Hui Yu wants to take Wu Qi away instead of saving him because he is a beastkin? Or even if Venerable Hui Yu is willing to save him, the people on the side of Elder Fei will simply destroy Wu Qi's wood vitality pearl. At that time, Wu Qi is really beyond saving. Venerable Hui Yu saw Hushi frowning and hesitating, and he smiled slightly. Shi Yu, if you haven't thought about it, I can know you first. When you know what you want, let the principal of Miracle Healer Academy to inform me. As long as I receive the news, I will definitely do it for you. Chapter 1339. Siam Continent. Venerable Hui Yu threw out a crystal-clear, colorful, and smooth token as he spoke. The words Hui Yu were engraved on the token. Just looking at it made people feel awe-inspiring. Hushi was slightly moved. Not to mention the meaning of the token. The token itself seemed to be a rare treasure that Miluo Continent could hardly see. Venerable Hui Yu said, if one day you come to Siam Continent, as long as you take out this token, the people of Divine Moon Palace will unconditionally listen to your orders. Of course, once you use up this opportunity, the token will be taken back. Hushi nodded and smiled. She was very satisfied with the reward. However, what Hushi didn't see was that when the token entered the void, strands of strange white mist began to appear in the void of the Sumera ring and wrap around the token. After a while, the white mist dissipated, and the token disappeared without a trace as if nothing had happened. This change happened so quickly that even the little ones playing in the ancient rhyme spiritual field didn't notice at all. The only strange thing was that after the token disappeared, the ninth secluded spirit spring seemed to increase in volume again, and the spring water became clearer. It seemed to exude a faint fragrance. Hushi, who was outside the void, didn't know at all that the reward she finally got disappeared in the blink of an eye. Venerable Hui Yu looked at Wei Qingyuan with a faint smile. Boy of the Wei family, I will remember your achievements. This time it is thanks to you. If you hadn't found Shi Yu, I'm afraid, Venerable Hui Yu said gratefully to Wei Qingyuan, but his demeanor was aloof. There was a hint of natural majesty and nobility, but Wei Qingyuan didn't mind. He even bowed his head a little flattered. His honor is giving me too much credit. It is a blessing to all of us that his honor can live well. Hushi raised her eyebrows slightly. Is this the innate sense of superiority that people from the upper realm have over people from the lower realm? She thought of the immortal Zijin in Seal Dragon Domain's secret territory, the little golden dragon, and the carelessness of her master when playing with He Sha. All the people from the Siam continent had an arrogance imprinted in their bones toward the people from the Miluo continent. And the martial artists of the Miluo continent also had a natural yearning for the distant Siam continent. What kind of place is Siam continent? Under the order of Venerable Hui Yu, Wei Jianxing praised the guards and servants in Beijing Pavilion one by one. Wei Jianxing gave them magic weapons of rank 7 and rank 8, and there were also many medicinal pills that everyone in Miluo continent was fighting for. In fact, these magic weapons and medicinal pills were useless to Wei Jianxing and the others. However, the guards and servants who got them burst into tears. Some even knelt down and kowtowed. Venerable Hui Yu walked up to Hushi slowly, looking at her with a smile. It was just that there was no sense of superiority in this gaze, only the kindness of an elder, little girl. In fact, I planned to take you back to Siam continent together after you cured my illness. When Venerable Hui said these words, he set up a barrier around he and Hushi, so the others could not hear their conversation. But this did not include Nangongyu. Nangongyu frowned almost immediately, and a cold chill flickered in his eyes. Chapter 1340. Magical Beast Forest tripped this man called Sheer Little Girl, and he said he wanted to take Sheer away. Venerable Hui turned his eyes on Nangongyu at the right time. He smiled slightly, however, when I see him. I know that you will not follow me, and I don't need me to take you to Siam continent. Nangongyu sneered. That depends on whether you have the ability to take her away. Venerable Hui heard the words, but instead of being angry, he laughed out loud. After laughing for a while, his expression became solemn and his eyes looked complicated. I seem to feel a powerful spiritual aura from you. But Hushi and Nangongyu glanced at each other, and they both saw doubts in each other's eyes. Hushi hurriedly asked, "But what?" A trace of solemnity and fear flashed in Venerable Huiyu's eyes. Then he shook her head as if he wanted to shake off the strange thoughts. He said with a half-smile, "Little girl, you have a good eye for picking man. However, before you choose to marry this man, you should think about how to remove the cold poison in his body." After finishing speaking, without waiting for Hushi's reaction, he waved to Wei Jianqing and others. As Wei Jianqing and others stood beside Venerable Huiyu formed a gesture with both hands. Then a huge teleportation array appeared around them. With a flash of white light, Venerable Huiyu and others disappeared on the spot. At the same time, those powerful and dark auras in the Mojing Pavilion also disappeared. In the Dean Room of Miracle Healer Academy, Jean Liqing was holding the inscribed jade slip in his hand, pacing back and forth restlessly. Jean Liqing had been the Dean of Miracle Healer Academy for more than 20 years. During this period, he had experienced countless ups and downs, but this was the first time he had the idea of resigning. Deputy Dean Jiang at the side was also affected by Jean Liqing's uneasiness. He asked nervously, "Dean, what happened really?" Jean Liqing stopped and looked at his friend, Deputy Dean Jiang, on the opposite with a hesitant expression. At this moment, a manservant's report suddenly came from outside the door. "Dean, Doctors Association President Liu and several elders are asking to see you." Jean Liqing's expression froze, he frowned even tighter, and a gleam of coldness flashed across his eyes. He took a deep breath and said to the manservant, "Let them in." When Deputy Dean Jiang heard President Liu's name, he looked shocked. "I heard that President Liu was ordered to be killed by Venerable Huiyu. How could he still have the guts to come to Miracle Healer Academy?" Jean Liqing sneered and said, "Because he knows that Venerable Huiyu is busy dealing with the Dark Knight clan now, and he has Golden Wolf backing him up, so no one in the Miracle Healer Academy dares to touch him now." Deputy Dean Jiang frowned and said, "Isn't he afraid that Venerable Huiyu will free up his matters and settle accounts with him?" Before Jean Liqing could answer, there was a knock on the door of the room, and then a middle-aged man came into the room with several old men who were over 100 years old. This middle-aged scribe was naturally Lu Shuyang. As soon as he entered Dean's room, he immediately bowed Jean Liqing with an indescribably graceful and humble manner. But there was an unconcealable arrogance in his eyes. "Dean Jean, long time no see." Jean Liqing said indifferently, "President Liu won't come here if there is nothing important. What's more, I heard that President Liu just ran away from Miracle Healer Academy in a hurry a few days ago. So why are you here again?" Lu Shuyang didn't look annoyed being ridiculed. He just smiled. "I'm here by the order of Sir Golden Wolf to ask Dean about the arrangement of the trip to the Magical Beast Forest." Chapter 1341. Must die. After Jean Liqing heard the words, he said in a rage, "Lu Shuyang, are you all crazy? Magical Beast Forest? Even if the martial artists at the nascent soul stage enter, they will also face life danger. Now you actually want those students in the academy to hunt the magical beasts? Are you trying to kill all the students in the academy?" Lu Shuyang's expression was still indifferent and his smile was gentle, but it also looked extremely cruel. Jin is really funny. The Miracle Healer Academy was established by Lord and the others. These students may also be sent to Siam continent in the future. Why would Lord kill them? It's just... Lu Shuyang paused, and the gentleness on his face turned into sarcasm. The Lord is tolerant. He created the Miracle Healer Academy to train them, but it doesn't mean that they can be lazy and incompetent and don't want to pay back. This time, Lord needs a lot of beastkin cubs to improve his strength. It's time to temper these students and let them serve Lord. Jian Liqing burst into flames and said angrily, "Even if you want beastkin cubs, you can let the elders of the academy go. Why do you want to put the students of the academy in danger? Why don't you elders of the Doctors' Association go?" Lu Shuyang raised his eyebrows and said with a leisurely smile, "Who said the elders of our Doctors' Association won't go? The elders behind me will follow the students and elders of Miracle Healer Academy to the Magical Beast Forest. Since Dean is worried that all the students in the academy will die, I have an idea." Lu Shuyang smiled and said slowly, "Each branch will send half of the students to the Magical Beast Forest to hunt for beastkin. The branch's deans and elders, except for those who must stay behind, everyone else will go together. In this way, the safety of the students can always be guaranteed, right?" Jian Liqing also wanted to refute, "But we don't have a map of the Magical Beast Forest, and we don't know the depth of it." Before Jian Liqing finished speaking, he was interrupted by the cold-faced Lu Shuyang. This time, there was no smile on his face. "Jin, don't forget, my daughter Jishi is also going to the Magical Beast Forest. Am I going to hurt my daughter? If Dean is still unwilling to agree to this, then I can only report to Sir Golden Wolf. At that time, let alone whether Dean Jin's position can be maintained, how many of those branch deans can remain? And what will happen to your son in Siam continent? Jin better think about it." Jian Liqing's face turned green and pale for a while, but in the end, he could only compromise. He said resentfully, "I will post a notice for students above the intermediate stage of the Gold Core stage to go. Letting the students below the Gold Core stage go to the Magical Beast Forest will only kill them." Lu Shuyang didn't disagree, but his eyes flashed with malicious intent. He said with a faint smile, "Oh, right. I remember that there is a student named Shiyu in the Huang Medical Branch. Although he is only at the Foundation Establishment stage, his real strength can even defeat the intermediate stage of the Gold Core stage. And I heard that Shiyu's medical skills are also superb. Other students below the Gold Core stage can be spared, but this Shiyu, I think he must go, right?" Jian Liqing's eyebrows twitched. He smelled a conspiracy from Lu Shuyang's words. However, Lu Shuyang's words were well-founded, so he couldn't refute it and could only bitterly agree. A satisfied smile appeared on Lu Shuyang's face, and a gloomy light flashed across his eyes. That young man whose talent and luck are thousands of times better than mine, so he must die. Chapter 1342. Fight at this time, Hashi was also very depressed. As Venerable Huiyu left, the people in the Mojing Pavilion also disappeared without a trace in an instant. Shi and Nangongyu searched the Mojing Pavilion upside down, but they couldn't find anything useful, let alone Wood Vitality Pearl or Wood Crystal. If the Wood Vitality Pearl belonging to Wu Qi cannot be found, it meant that Wu Qi couldn't be recovered. Even if Hushi's medical skills were superb, she was a little helpless in this situation. Seeing Shaoli suppressing her sadness and smiling to her, but she turned his back to secretly wipe away her tears, Hushi felt so sorry for the little fox. There was another thing that made her depressed. Hushi remembered throwing the jade token given by Venerable Huiyu into the void. However, after she searched the entire void, she couldn't find any trace of the jade token. Even Little Egg and the others don't see it. This is really strange. Nangongyu was very happy. Thinking of the old man who recognized Shir's identity as a woman and wanted to take Shir away, Nangongyu was very upset. He didn't want Shir to go to that old man again in the future. Now that the jade token was lost, it really suited his heart. As for the possibility that Shir would seek Venerable Huiyu for help in the future, Nangongyu crossed this possibility without hesitation. As long as he was by Shir's side, Shir didn't need to ask for help from anyone. She just had to rely on him. Of course, Nangongyu thought so in his heart, but he didn't show it on the surface. Instead, he comforted Hushi gently. When they returned to the dormitory from the Mojing Pavilion again, they saw Xian Mu's cold face. Xian Mu had disappeared since he was cured by Hushi that day. Hushi had long been accustomed to the disappearance of this roommate from time to time, so she didn't care at all. But Nangongyu has always been brooding over this matter, thinking that this person absolutely didn't have kind intention toward Sheer. So for Sheer's safety, he relied on his strong strength to avoid being discovered and stay in the Huang No. 1 dormitory. Hushi was not surprised to see Xian Mu. She examined him up and down, then he nodded and said, "It seems that you have fully recovered." Xian Mu nodded, but he looked at Nangongyu with cold eyes. "You, get out?" Nangongyu's eyes were piercing. He raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Who are you? You dare to order me?" Xian Mu's expression was still cold, but his aura suddenly rose. "This is the dormitory of Shi Yu and I. You are not qualified." The aura erupting from Xian Mu's body was extremely terrifying, shaking everything in the entire dormitory slightly. Tong Bing, who rushed over, was caught by this aura and fell to the ground with a terrified expression. Nangongyu seemed unaware of this. He also exuded the same fierce aura. He said with killing intent, "Whether I'm qualified or not, it is not up to you." "If I kill you, I'm qualified, right?" As soon as he said, they moved at the same time. Lights were intertwining in the dormitory, and the bed that Hushi had just found a manager to repair was crumbling again. The herbs on the shelf also fell off. Tong Bing ran over in a panic, grabbed Hushi's hand and shouted, "Brother Shiyu, why did they fight? Brother Xian Mu's injury has just healed. Will he get hurt again? Can you tell them to stop?" Chapter 1343. Satisfied? Hushi looked impatiently at the two who were going to destroy the dormitory, and she said coldly, "If you want to fight, fight outside. Whoever destroys the things in the dormitory will pay 10 times the compensation. Also, if you like to demolish the house so much, then all of you should sleep in the yard at night." As soon as Hushi finished speaking, the two people who had been fighting quickly separated. They glared at each other. There seemed to be sparks between them. Nangongyu said coldly, "Go out?" Xian Mu accepted the challenge without hesitation. "Go?" As soon as the words fell, they had disappeared from the dormitory. Tong Bing was dumbfounded for a moment. He looked at Hushi with a face full of disbelief. "Brother Shiyu, didn't I tell you to stop them? Why did you let them fight outside? Don't you worry that Brother Xian Mu will get hurt?" Hushi closed his eyes and entered into a cross-legged state. Hearing the words, he said indifferently, "Don't worry, they won't die. Even if they are half dead, I can still save them." After finishing speaking, Hushi no longer cared about Tong Bing and quickly entered the state of meditation. For some reason, recently, she always felt that her stagnant cultivation was slowly advancing again. She seemed to be closer and closer to the real gold core stage. Hushi even felt that there was only a thin film separating her from the gold core stage, but she couldn't find a way to pierce the thin film for a while. Tong Bing watched Hushi indifferently closing her eyes and meditating, feeling only a burst of disappointment in his mind. He hurried to the door, staring at the dark night sky bewilderedly, looking forward to Xian Mu's safe return. How can Shiyu be so heartless? Xian Mu is his friend, but Shiyu doesn't care about Xian Mu's life at all. Even a bed in the dormitory is more important than Xian Mu in Shiyu's eyes. Shiyu had already treated Xian Mu so indifferently. Why does Xian Mu still treat Shiyu so well? Time passed second by second, and the night was getting darker and darker. Tong Bing's feet were getting more and more numb. He had been standing here for almost 2 hours. Suddenly, Hushi on the bed opened her eyes, staring at the front and slowly restraining the aura around her. The next moment, 2 figures suddenly appeared in the room. Seeing the two who had left for 2 hours, Hushi couldn't help laughing out loud. It was the first time she saw Nangongyu in such a mess. Although he wore a mask, even the mask couldn't hide the injuries on his face and hands. Even his clothes became tattered, revealing his half-naked chest and the tiny wounds inside. Compared with Nangongyu, Xian Mu's situation was not much better. Not only was his face bruised, his forehead was also bruised. His clothes were also torn, and there was a smell of blood. He was in such a mess as if he had just been beaten up. Hushi clenched a fist and pressed it to her lips to cough lightly to hold back a laugh. Then she jumped off the bed and asked loudly, "How? You two satisfied?" Neither of them spoke. Nangongyu hugged Hushi in his arms smoothly, bowed his head and kissed her on the cheek. Then he smiled provocatively at Xian Mu. Chapter 1344. Let me see. Xian Mu looked at him with a cold gaze. He took out the medicine and applied by himself. Hushi unexpectedly found that the relationship between them seemed to be a little better than before. If the atmosphere was tense before they went out to fight, then, apart from still being hostile, they seemed to have appreciated each other a little more. Hushi smiled. She took out 2 porcelain bottles and threw them to Nangongyu and Xian Mu respectively. The external injury medicine in this porcelain bottle was refined with 9th secluded spirit spring. There was no external injury medicine in Miluo continent that was more effective than this. At this moment, Tong Bing, who was waiting at the door, finally came to his senses and realized that Xian Mu had returned. "Brother Xian Mu, you're injured." Tong Bing's eyes turned red. He felt his heart was being tightened, so he hurriedly rushed toward Xian Mu. "Oh my God, so many injuries. How? How could he be so cruel? How could he beat you like this?" Xian Mu frowned in disgust. He waved and threw Tong Bing out of the dormitory. When Tong Bing fell to the ground, he was dumbfounded. He wiped away his tears and rushed toward the dormitory. However, when he reached the door, he found that he was blocked by a powerful force. He could see the scene inside, but he couldn't get in. Tong Bing was going crazy. He hit the door frame and shouted loudly, "Brother Xian Mu, let me see your injury. Please let me in. Brother Shiyu, please let me in." Wuru, however, Tong Bing didn't know that his voice had been isolated. No matter how loud he yelled, Xian Mu and Shiyu couldn't hear him. Nangongyu withdrew his cold eyes from the crying young man at the door, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. This young man who lived with Shier looked very weak and useless, but when Nangongyu looked at him, he felt an ominous feeling in his heart. His existence will seem to bring disaster to Hushi one day. However, he is just a weakling like an ant. How could he threaten Shier? Nangongyu was in a trance that when he applied the medicine, he accidentally tore his wound. The wound that had already stopped bleeding instantly bled profusely. Hushi's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't sit still any longer. She grabbed the medicine bottle in his hand and complained, "Why are you so careless? You can't even apply the medicine?" As Hushi spoke, she took out a cotton cloth, dipped it in spirit spring water, and gently wiped off the blood on Nangongyu's wound. When she saw the hideous flesh, she couldn't help frowning and blowing gently before sprinkling the external injury medicine on it. Nangongyu felt the girl's slender and soft fingers and the warm breath with a delicate fragrance on his skin. His whole body became hot. There was a gentle smile in his eyes. The happiness almost overflowed from his eyes. Sure enough, my Shier still cares about me the most. What Xian Mu? What little white face? They can't be compared with me at all. However, Nangongyu still put on an aggrieved expression on his face as if he was holding back the pain and said, "Shier, it's okay. I'll do it myself. It was just because the wound on my back was painful. That's why I accidentally." "The injury on your back is very painful?" Hushi felt even more distressed and worried when she heard it. She quickly got up and said, "Let me take a look." The girl's face was full of worry and tension as if he was the only one left in the whole world. Chapter 1345. Tong Bing's resentment. Nangongyu smiled even more, and he still did not forget to show off to Xian Mu provocatively. Xian Mu snorted and wanted to ignore it, But he was really upset when he watched Shiyu carefully heal Nangongyu as if she had forgotten his own existence. For Nangongyu, he was disdainful and disgusted at the beginning. How could he put a lower realm martial artist into his eye? However, after they fought, they inexplicably appreciated each other. Xian Mu had been in Miluo continent for so many years, and he had long forgotten what it was like to have a hearty fight with someone. But in today's match with Nangongyu, both of them were content in the fight, which also made Xian Mu have a little admiration for Nangongyu. He grew up in Siam continent. Being able to achieve the current level of cultivation was already genius among the geniuses. And this man, whose age was younger than him, could have such strength. Even Xian Mu couldn't help but look at him differently. As a result, he couldn't beat Nangongyu to death and couldn't chase him away. He also felt very annoyed seeing him here. Xian Mu could only snort, picked up the external injury medicine Hushi gave him and walked out of the dormitory with a cold face. "Brother Xian Mu." Tong Bing cried out in surprise when he saw Xian Mu coming out. He rushed over. Later, Tong Bing saw the loneliness on Xian Mu's face. He looked inside and saw that Hushi was treating her servant's injury intimately. Tong Bing suddenly realized something, and he quickly stepped forward and grabbed Xian Mu's sleeve, begging, "Brother Xian Mu, you are injured. If Shiyu doesn't apply the medicine for you, I will help you apply the medicine, okay? Whatever you want me to do, I'm willing to do it." Xian Mu turned to look at him. Tong Bing only felt that his heart was about to pop out of his chest. He looked obsessively at the man in front of him with scorching eyes. The disgust in Xian Mu's eyes was even more. He said coldly in a flat voice, "If Shiyu hadn't taken you in, you would have died 10,000 times already. Get lost." After speaking, his figure flickered and disappeared in place. Tong Bing's blood seemed to turn from boiling to freezing all of a sudden. He stood there blankly for a long time. Finally, he couldn't hold back the tears. Tong Bing stood for a long time, then he looked into the dormitory. The lights in the dormitory were warm and bright. Shiyu and her lover were cuddling each other as if there was no gap between them. However, such intimacy was gouging Xian Mu's heart. Tong Bing remembered that on the night when the Mojing Pavilion was stolen, he clearly saw Shiyu running to Xian Mu's bed, and she was still intimately close to him. Why? Why did Shiyu hook up with another man after only a few days? Doesn't Shiyu know that brother Xian Mu will be sad if he does this? Or is Shiyu good at playing people's minds? What about me? I'm so kind and dedicated to brother Xian Mu, but brother Xian Mu doesn't even bat an eye on me. Even allowing me to live in Huang No. 1 dormitory is because of Shiyu. Just because of this flirtatious Shiyu? Tong Bing thought of Xian Mu's last words, and the pain and sorrow in his eyes finally turned into a vague resentment. He was crying in a dark corner, looking at Shiyu, who was smiling softly and sweetly under the light of the crystal stone. His mumbled, "Shiyu, it would be great if you disappear. Then, this place will belong to me and brother Xian Mu, and brother Xian Mu will not be sad anymore." Chapter 1346. Hushi's worry in the dormitory. Nangongyu felt the fiery and sinister gaze. Then he turned his head. But there was only darkness in his eyes, and no figure was seen. As his divine sense spread, apart from Hushi and him in the entire dormitory, only the weakling boy curled up in his room and cried pitifully. Nangongyu frowned. Am I really overthinking? After treating Nangongyu's last wound, Hushi looked at his body covered with bandages and said with a frown, "Nangongyu, it's almost 1 year." Nangongyu was taken aback for a moment, then he immediately showed a wicked smile, hugged the girl into his arms, and whispered in her ear, "Yes, if Sheer didn't say it, I almost forgot about it. Unknowingly, we have known each other for almost a year, but Sheer, you have not become my wife. TSK, it seems that my efficiency is really too low." Hushi was originally full of sadness, but she was amused by his words. With a wave of her hand, the door of the dormitory closed immediately. Purple abyss vine began to spread in her own dormitory, isolating the outside world and the inner room. Hushi tapped his chest and said seriously, "Be serious. You know what I'm telling you. Nangongyu grabbed her hand, leaned close to kiss her lips, and bit her jade-like finger. Then he said with burning eyes, "What else is more serious than she or you marrying me?" Hushi felt that she was about to be defeated by this shameless man. So she pushed away his face in disgust, wiped her wet finger on her shirt and said, "Your sickness is about to trigger soon, but I don't know if the treatment last time will still be useful." Thinking of this, Hushi felt a little depressed. She had cured so many people. Even venerable Huiyu, who suffered from epilepsy and a brain tumor, could be treated successfully through surgery. But for Nangongyu's illness, she was still helpless. During this year, Hushi also kept checking Nangongyu's body. But she was shocked to find that the cold poison in Nangongyu's body seemed to be alive. It memorized her own treatment plan and developed antibodies naturally. In other words, if Nangongyu got sick again this year, the treatment method she used last year might not have the same effect. Similarly, although Nangongyu suppressed the cold poison with the blazing sun heavenly flame in the flame cave every year, the cold poison in his body had become more and more resistant to the blazing sun heavenly flame. It was very likely that in another year or two, or even less than a year, Nangongyu would suffer serious injury in the next trigger. Nangongyu saw that the girl in his arms was frowning worriedly. He couldn't help hugging her and kissing. "Don't worry, I still want to marry you. How can I die so easily?" Hushi stretched out her hands and hugged him tightly. The uneasiness and fear in her heart gradually calmed down in the embrace. A year ago, she treated Nangongyu's injury just to pay off the debt. But now, as long as she thought about losing this man, she would feel the heart-wrenching pain. Jade Fire Toad, is there any news yet? With the Jade Fire Toad, even if there is no way to completely eradicate the cold poison, Hushi was confident that it would be able to suppress the cold poison for at least 10 years. Chapter 1347. Notice Nangongyu hugged her even tighter as if he wanted to integrate her into his flesh and blood. "Sheer, how can I die? If I'm dead, how can I protect you? How can I keep you by my side forever?" Half of the people from each branch go to the magical beast forest to hunt beastkin. Hushi looked up in surprise, showing an expression of disbelief. "Are you sure it's not the secret realm? It's not the Sun Moon Mountain Range? But the magical beast forest?" Jin Ziyu nodded solemnly. "This morning, this notice was sent to the entire college. Every branch is no exception, even including the elite Heaven Medical Branch." The elite Heaven Medical Branch referred to Lu Jishi and others who stood at the top of the entire Miracle Healer Academy. In order to allow them to grow and develop better, they were all taught by the elders alone. The resources they got were not comparable to ordinary students. Hushi frowned and said, "Apart from the students from the academy, is there anyone else going with me?" Jin Ziyu nodded and said, "The elders of Miracle Healer Academy, including most of the branch deans, will go. The Doctors Association will also send many doctors with advanced cultivation and superb medical skills. I also heard that some aristocratic families also send some elders to accompany them." Hushi tapped the table lightly. Qian Dazhuang, who was standing behind Jin Ziyu, shouted excitedly, "What are you afraid of? Isn't it just a magical beast forest? With Shiyu here, and Boss has advanced to the gold core stage, even if it is a dragon's den, we can still venture in." Jin Ziyu glared at him and said in a deep voice, "Dazhuang, don't talk nonsense. You don't understand the horror of the magical beast forest at all. Not to mention us students, even the elders in the academy dare not to go deep." Chun Xiaofeng also nodded and said, "I have heard that in the deepest part of the magical beast forest, the beastkin level there has already exceeded rank 10. It is almost a godlike existence. Its cultivation level is even more terrifying than the soul-splitting stage. If we really come across such a beastkin, even if our entire Miracle Healer Academy students are added up, we won't be able to stop the random attack of the opponent." Qian Dazhuang and the others were frightened at once, and they were speechless for a while. Hushi glanced at Nangongyu, received his deep gaze, paused and said, "You don't have to worry too much. Everyone knows the danger of the magical beast forest. Since the Academy let us hunt beastkin cubs, then it means that we don't need to go deep into the magical beast forest. We only need to hunt in the peripheral areas. That way the danger will be much lower. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they heard the words. Since Shiyu said there was no need to worry, then there must be no need to worry. Those of Huang Medical Branch already had a deep instinctive trust in Hashi. You go to the square to gather first. I will come over in a while. Seeing that everyone went out, Jin Ziyu stayed behind. Jin Ziyu's current injury had been completely healed by Hashi. After a period of training and taking medicinal pills, his cultivation had broken through the gold core stage. He was about to reach the peak of his original cultivation. Jin Ziyu had always been a restrained person who talked with his actions, but from the moment he recovered from his injury, he had completely regarded Shiyu as his master. He swore to be loyal to her for the rest of his life. Chapter 1348. What did you see seeing him staying? Hashi's heart moved slightly. She already guessed what he was going to say. Jinziyu said, Shiyu, there is something I want to tell you alone. Hashi raised his eyebrows and said, Is it about the reason you were injured that year? Jinziyu nodded. Then he looked at Nangongyu, who was sitting next to Shiyu. Seeing this, his heart couldn't help beating violently. They had been in this room for a long time, and this man was standing beside Shiyu. But none of them noticed his existence. Even up to this moment, he wanted to tell Shiyu the secret alone. But the moment before he spoke, he almost ignored that there was this strange man by her side. Seeing Jin Ziyu looking at Nangongyu, Hashi understood. She said calmly, It's fine. He is my people, so just say what you have to say. Nangongyu, who was labeled as her own people, felt very delighted. He grabbed Hashi's little hand and squeezed it gently. Seeing that Shiyu said so, Jin Ziyu no longer hesitated. Finally, he revealed the secret that had been hidden in his heart for several years. A few years ago, Jin Ziyu just became the president of the Academy Student Council. He had outstanding talent at a young age, and he had been favored by many elders and deans. He always wanted to make the Academy better. He even kept fantasizing about the days when he was chosen to enter the Siam continent. When Jin Ziyu talked about this past, his expression was very calm, as if he was telling someone else's story. Because I was the president of the Academy Student Council, I was able to freely enter and leave most places in the Academy, including many forbidden places today. One night, when I was cultivating on the back mountain, I saw a lot of strange men in black entering the direction of the current Beijing Pavilion. At that time, I was very curious and young, so I followed behind them. When Jin Ziyu said this, he showed obvious fear and horror on his face. Hashi asked, What did you see? I saw a person who should not have appeared in Miracle Healer Academy. Jin Ziyu's voice was hoarse, trying to suppress the trembling. That was a candidate who took the Academy assessment in the same year as me. But, in the first round after the spiritual root test, he disappeared. And all of us thought he was too sad to be eliminated. So he went home. Hashi's breathing was stagnant, and her eyes widened slightly. Jin Ziyu's words made her think of something. Jin Ziyu continued, Besides the examinee I knew, there was also a beastkin who was unconscious beside him. I saw an old man with a white beard put them on an altar and kept channeling the array. Then the examinee and the beastkin showed painful expressions. Finally, a light green crystal stone condensed from the beastkin's body. Hashi and Nangongyu looked at each other, and they each saw the surprise in each other's eyes. It turns out that the extraction of Wood Vitality Pearl started so many years ago. So how many beastkins did they kill in order to extract Wood Vitality Pearl? How many spiritual root martial artists were captured? Jin Ziyu took a deep breath, clasped his hands tightly on the chair, and said in a hoarse voice, Seeing beastkin roaring in pain and the candidate who was at the same age as me was also half dead, I felt uneasy and wanted to escape. Who knows, I saw a person at that moment. Without waiting for Hashi to ask, Jin Ziyu continued, It's the president of the Doctors Association, Lu Shuyang. Chapter 1349. Strange. Lu Shuyang. Hushi frowned and said slowly, Lu Shuyang? Jian Ziyu nodded. Lu Shuyang checked that candidate and said, this person has no wood spiritual power on him, so he is already useless. After that, he grabbed the examinee's dantian. Then he was turned into an old and ugly mummy in an instant. Hushi didn't respond yet, but Nangong Yu immediately looked serious, grabbed Hushi's hand, and said in a deep voice, are you sure he turned the examinee into a mummy instead of just poaching his dantian? Jian Ziyu closed his eyes, suppressed the fear in his mind and said, I will never forget the scene I saw with my own eyes. At that time, my heart was full of fear, but I didn't dare to move at all. Then I heard the white-bearded old man say to Lu Shuyang, it seems that among all the people with wood spiritual root, only President Lu is the most powerful. Not only are you not dead after your wood spiritual root got extracted, but you even devour the beastkin's vitality in the processing of condensing yuan crystal. Now you even have the ability to detect spiritual roots and devour people's cultivation. This is a blessing in disguise. Even I'm jealous of you. As soon as Jian Ziyu said this, Nangong Yu's expression changed. His hand holding around Hushi's tightened slightly, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes as if he was afraid that someone else would take her away. Hushi was also shocked. She didn't expect that Lu Shuyang was also the one whose wood spiritual root got extracted. However, Lu Shuyang not only didn't die of wood spiritual root extraction, but he also devoured the beastkin vitality. Moreover, he now had the ability to devour other people's cultivation and detect the spiritual root. What was even more frightening was that Lu Shuyang should hate Elder Fei and the group because of this, but now he was able to serve them wholeheartedly. For the first time, Hushi felt real fear of a person. This Lu Shuyang's scheming and ruthlessness really moved her. Hushi took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in her heart, and looked at Jian Ziyu. Did you escape that night? Jian Ziyu nodded. Then he shook his head bitterly. I escaped, but you can also say I didn't. At that time, I didn't dare to move at all. I kept watching them use that bloody and cruel array to extract the wood spiritual root martial artists and beastkins, one by one to the light green crystal stones or beads. Until the last beastkin, that beastkin was very strong. He suddenly woke up and blew himself up while being extracted. Lu Shuyang and the others panicked for a while, and I took the opportunity to escape. Hushi raised her eyebrows. Since you escaped? There was a painful look in Jian Ziyu's eyes. When the beastkin exploded, a green bead splashed on my body, and I took that bead away before I had time to think about it. It was because of the pearl that Lu Shuyang discovered my whereabouts that night. He seemed to have a way to find the trace of this peel. Although I kept it inside a jade box that can isolate divine sense, but Lu Shuyang still discovered the aura on me. With that said, Jian Ziyu took out a jade box from the storage bag and opened it. Hushi saw a crystal-clear emerald green bead inside. As soon as she held the bead in her hand, she felt a powerful vitality rush toward her. Jian Ziyu said, I kept this bead all the time, hoping to expose Lu Shuyang's conspiracy one day, but now it seems that I can't do it myself. Chapter 1350. Lu family's father and daughter. Hushi squinted and said, Can you give this to me? Of course. Jian Ziyu was stunned for a moment. Then he immediately said, It's just that if you are contaminated with the aura of this bead, you will be easily discovered by Lu Shuyang. I'm afraid it will bring you trouble. Hushi sneered. Even if I don't have the wood vitality pearl, the father and daughter will still come to trouble me. Only then did Jian Ziyu heave a sigh of relief. Then a gleam of hope appeared in his eyes. In this life, it is impossible for me to fight against Lu Shuyang and his daughter, let alone revenge. But maybe, you can. Maybe, I can wait until the day when I see the death of my enemy? Hushi put the wood vitality pearl into the void and looked at Jian Ziyu again. After Lu Shuyang found out about you, he didn't kill you? Jian Ziyu shook his head with a wry smile, and his eyes were filled with deep hatred. He can't confirm that I broke into the forbidden area that day, and the deans had always regarded me highly, so he dared not hurt me openly. But he let people stab me in the back when I was on a mission. When I came back from the heaven-level mission, half of my brothers were dead, and my cultivation had almost completely gone. I was kicked out of Heaven Medical Branch by him, but just like this, the Liu family father and daughter still refused to let me go. They asked the doctors to give me an addictive drug, which poisoned and killed me bit by bit. If I didn't encounter you, Shiyu, I'm afraid I would be dead in less than half a year. Jin Ziyu's voice was hoarse and distorted with anger and pain. He stood up suddenly, knelt down on one knee, bowed toward Hushi and said, Shiyu, I said that as long as you cure me, you will be my master. From now on, no matter what you ask me to do, I, Jin Ziyu, will never frown. However, if one day you deal with Lu Jishi and Lu Shuyang, please give me a chance to let them taste the pain I have suffered. It was Lu Jishi who framed you? Jin Ziyu sneered and said, She always looks like a lofty goddess as if her hands are never stained with blood. But I know that everything I suffered was manipulated by her behind the scenes. Don't mention me. She could even give up and trample Caillou, who was devoted to her. From this, you know how vicious and ruthless she is. Shiyu, you must be careful of her. She wants to kill you not once or twice. This time going to the magical beast forest is the best opportunity. I don't believe that she will not take this opportunity to attack you. Nangong Yu's eyes turned cold, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. When I was not around, someone tried to put Shier to death again and again. Lu Jishi? Is she tired of living? After Jin Ziyu told the secrets of the year, he went to the square. However, Nangong Yu grabbed Hushi and stroked her cheek with one hand. His voice was gentle, but his expression was extremely dignified. Shier, Lu Shuyang's ability to devour Beastkin's vitality is terrifying. Remember, you must be careful with him. You absolutely must not use any with spiritual power around him. Hushi frowned and said, Is there really anyone who can devour the vitality of a beastkin? If they could devour the vitality of a beastkin, wouldn't many people do that? After all, the vitality of a beastkin is so powerful and it can be transformed into different abilities. Chapter 1351. Narrow Escape. Nangong Yu sneered and said with deep eyes, You think it is so easy to devour the vitality of Beastkin? Beastkin's vitality and soul are stronger than humans. Even if humans are 4 levels higher than Beastkin's, they may not be able to swallow it. If they do it by force, it will only destroy their bodies. Otherwise, with the greed of many people, how can they not covet such benefits? Unless what? Unless that beastkin trusts this person very much, and it even has the good intention of using its own vitality to heal the person's wounds and maintain his life at the beginning. At this time, if this person tries to ruthlessly devour the beastkin's vitality at the cost of his own cultivation, it may be possible. However, in this way, that beastkin with good intentions will end up in an extremely miserable end. Hushi took a deep breath. Requite kindness with enmity? That's right. Nangong Yu sneered. It's simply ungrateful and cruel. So you must be careful when facing person like Lu Shuyang. Hushi nodded with a cold gleam in her eyes. Then, some important information flashed across her mind, but it was just a glimpse. She couldn't grasp it anymore. By the time Hushi and Nangong Yu arrived at the square, almost all the people from the other branches had already arrived. This time, it wasn't just the students who came. Almost 90% of the academy's deans and elders appeared on the square. Moreover, Hushi also saw Zheng Shouyue, who was standing in front of him and the others, with a livid complexion and wounds on his body. Seeing Shiyu, Zheng Shouyue showed a trace of guilt and worry on his face. He stepped forward and said in a hoarse voice, Shiyu, when you arrive at the magical beast forest, you must follow me and don't run around. Hushi nodded. Then she frowned and said, Dean, your injury? It's nothing, just a minor injury. Zheng Shouyue said indifferently, All the deans disagree with you all going to the magical beast forest for training, but the academy insists on this decision, and those bastards in the Mojing Pavilion. Having said that, Zheng Shoyue's voice stopped. He gritted his teeth to calm the anger in his heart. In short, it has become a fact for you to go to the magical beast forest. But, Shiyu, your cultivation is only at the foundation establishment stage. Why don't you stay in the academy? As Zheng Shoyue was talking, Deputy Dean Jiang suddenly said from above, "Everyone, please listen to me. Most of you must already know the reason why you are gathered here today. That is to go to the magical beast forest for training." As soon as the words magical beast forest came out, even those who knew the truth a long time ago were in an uproar. That is the magical beast forest known as the human grave. Even the martial artists at the nascent soul stage could die in it, let alone these low-level students. Deputy Dean Zhang's eyes were full of worry and panic, but the man in black next to him stepped forward and glanced at him coldly. He could only take a deep breath and continued, "This time, the training will be recorded in your assessment results this year. During the training process in the magical beast forest, whoever can capture the beastkin cubs alive will be directly promoted to the high-level academy and rewarded with 10,000 points. Those who perform particularly well will receive the slot of going to the Siam continent." As soon as these words were said, half of the originally worried people became excited and eager to try. Chapter 1352. Voluntary registration. These students are only under 30 years old, and most of them were inexperienced. They had always only heard about the horror of the magical beast forest, but they had not really realized the horror of this mission. Now that they heard that capturing beastkin cubs alive would bring so many benefits, they had long forgotten about the danger. Deputy Dean Jiang continued, "Besides, sending everyone to the magical beast forest is not disregarding everyone's safety. Deans from our 8 branches and several nascent soul elders from the academy will go with you. There are also several senior doctors from the Doctors Association. The academy will do everything possible to ensure everyone's safety." This time, even the remaining half of the worried people were a little eager to try. But they didn't see the pitiful and mocking eyes of the man in black above. Deputy Dean Jiang breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat from his forehead. This training is a compulsory mission. Half of the people in each branch must go. Students above the gold core stage intermediate stage are not allowed to evade. Otherwise, they will be expelled from the academy. The remaining insufficient slots will be made up according to the power ranking. Of course, we also welcome those who voluntarily sign up. All voluntary sign-ups, regardless of the final experience results, will receive an additional reward of 500 points. Okay, next, each branch will compile the list of participants. We will set off tomorrow by 7 a.m. 7 a.m.? Hushy's eyes were full of astonishment. Isn't this too rush? It's like they can't wait to send all the students to the magical beast forest. Hushy was thinking, then Qian Dazhuang's voice came. "Shiyu, shall we participate?" Hushy turned around, raised her eyebrows and said, "Of course." Wu Qi was now in a coma. If she wanted to cure him, apart from retrieving Wu Qi's wood vitality pearl, the most likely way to find a way might be in the magical beast forest. She could take the opportunity to check it out. Qian Dazhuang and others laughed immediately after hearing the words. "Great, she will participate, then we will also volunteer to sign up." In fact, Qian Dazhuang, Jin Ziyu and others were all at the gold core stage. In addition, there were few people in Huang Medical Branch, and there were very few gold core stage. They must participate whether they volunteered or not. But when they heard that Shi was going together, they suddenly felt relieved. Even Zhang Yi and Fang Yun, who had a lower level of cultivation, asked to sign up one after another. Zheng Shoyue had been worried about what to do. If the students resisted, did he really have to kick them out? But unexpectedly, in the end, just because Shi said that she would go, more than half of the people in Huang Medical Branch wanted to sign up voluntarily. Great. I was worried about the danger of the magical beast forest just now. Now that Shiyu is going too, I don't worry anymore. That's right. Xiyu led Qian Dazhuang and a group of trash by herself back then to complete the heaven-level mission with ease. Even the magical beast forest is nothing to be afraid of. Damn, who are you calling trash? I'll beat you up. Ha ha ha, Dazhuang, don't even think of bullying me with your gold core stage. I took the medicinal pills given by Xiyu, plus this short period of training. I have now reached the pseudo-gold core stage. After a while, I'm not afraid of you anymore. Different from the fearful and intriguing atmosphere of other branches, the Huang medical branch was full of laughter. Chapter 1353. Good. Very good. Zheng Shouyue stared blankly at the boys and girls laughing and cursing around Xiyu. He couldn't believe that they were students from his own branch. Once upon a time, these people were dispirited, cowardly, and humble. They only wanted to escape when they encountered danger. When they saw the students in other branches, they were resentful and felt inferior. But now, in just a few months, they had undergone such a big change. And all of this was just because of Xiyu. Zheng Shouyue was in a daze when suddenly a man's deep and cold voice came into his ears. I'll join too. Zheng Shouyue was startled by the sudden sound. When he turned around and saw the person who spoke, he was so frightened that he jumped back several meters before exclaiming, Xian Mu? That's right, the man in front of him was dressed in a black robe, his eyes were cold, and his stern face was expressionless. He was none other than Xian Mu from the Huang Medical Branch. Although Zheng Shouyue was a dean of Huang Medical Branch, he knew better than anyone else that Xian Mu's cultivation level was far higher than him, and his identity was even more terrifying. Zheng Shouyue took a deep breath and asked a little stammeringly, Student Xian Mu, what did you just say? Xian Mu frowned, looking annoyed. He didn't want to talk more. As he looked at Xiyu, there was an imperceptible wave in his eyes, which seemed gentle and moved. Xian Mu smelled a conspiracy from the arrangement of the Miracle Healer Academy. He never wanted to be related to someone else, but this time, for the first time, he did not want anything to go wrong with Xiyu. He wanted to protect her by his side. Nan Gongyu, who was standing behind Hashi, knew his intention immediately. He glared at him. Xi'er is mine, so I will protect her. I don't need you to meddle in my business. Xian Mu sneered. None of your business. Seeing that Xian Mu didn't speak, Zheng Shouyue was about to ask again tremblingly. Then Qian Dazhuang, who was relatively heartless, yelled, Dean Zheng, didn't you hear? Xian Mu is also going to the magical beast forest. Haha, with Master Xian Mu here, what magical beast are we afraid of? Zheng Shouyue still couldn't react to it, but after all, he was a nascent soul expert and a branch dean. His expression and voice quickly recovered from the shock. Xian Mu, don't you never participate in the activities of the academy? Xian Mu squinted with a hint of impatience. Qian Dazhuang laughed heartlessly and said, Isn't it obvious? Master Xian Mu is worried about Xiyu's safety. Isn't that right, Senior Xian? Zhang Yi on the side also said in a childlike manner, Senior Xian Mu has always taken good care of Brother Xiyu. In the past, Senior Xian Mu never let other people live in Huang No. 1 dormitory, but not Brother Xiyu. Last time, Senior Xian Mu stopped those villains from capturing Brother Xiyu. The magical beast forest is so dangerous this time. Of course Senior Xian Mu will follow. Nan Gongyu gritted his teeth. Good, very good. If this man with bad intentions is allowed to get close to Xi'er again, my name will not be Nan Gongyu. He held Hashi firmly with one arm, showing his sovereignty. Hashi was dumbfounded. These people are really imaginative. At this time, Zheng Shouyue also remembered the scene of the theft of the Mojing Pavilion, and he immediately accepted this explanation very happily. Indeed, with Xian Mu present, the safety of the Huang Medical Branch was guaranteed by 50% more. Chapter 1354. Stupid, however, at this time, a person shouted in a panic, Brother Xian Mu, why are you going? Don't you know that the magical beast forest is very dangerous? Can you and brother Shiyu don't go, okay? The young man's face was pale. His eyes were filled with real panic and worry. He rushed over in a hurry and wanted to grab Xianmu's sleeve to stop him. The original harmonious and cheerful atmosphere of Huang Medical Branch was instantly destroyed. Everyone looked at the inexplicably disruptive person with subtle expressions. Many whispered mockingly, "This Tongbing is really stupid. Who is Senior Xianmu? What is he? He actually calls Senior Xianmu brother? So disgusted. I heard that he got into Miracle Healer Academy through the back door. This kind of person has no strength at all. What else can he do besides riding on someone's coattails?" The voices of the people from Huang Medical Branch were not low, so Tongbing of course heard them too. Tears of shame, anger, and embarrassment filled his eyes. He didn't understand why these people always used such malice to speculate and humiliate him. Tongbing wanted to escape from this painful place, but when he thought of Xianmu's safety, he held back his tears and let himself bear the humiliation to stay. Seeing that Xianmu didn't even look at him, he wanted to go to Hushi and grab his sleeve, but he met Nangong Yu's cold and piercing eyes. Tongbing was so frightened that he could only take a step back and begged in a low voice, "Shiyu, you are at the foundation establishment stage like me, so we don't need to participate in this experience. As long as you don't go, Xianmu brother won't take risks." Can we not go? With our foundation establishment stage cultivation, we will only be their burden. Before Hushi had time to say anything, Qian Wang had already sneered mercilessly and said, "Bah, you'll of course be our burden, but how can a trash like you compare yourself with Shiyu? That's right. Just don't go if you're afraid of death. Why drag Shiyu along with you? None of us expect you to go." "Yeah, won't he drag us down if he comes?" These ridicules became louder. Tongbing felt a twinge of shame and anger at what they said. He looked at Shiyu with tears in his eyes, hoping that he could clarify for him. However, Shiyu didn't even look at him. She just talked to Nangong Yu on her own. Xianmu didn't even look at him. He only had Shiyu in his eyes. Tongbing clenched his hands into fists with tears streaming down his face. He just felt that at this moment, the whole world was isolating and humiliating him, making him feel indescribably lonely and cold. Those who had signed up all left to make preparations before departure. Tongbing stood there blankly. No one paid attention to his existence, let alone his tears and heartache. After a long time, most of the students in the square left. Tongbing was about to go back in a daze when he suddenly heard a low and gentle male voice in his ear. "Tongbing, people in this academy bullied you and humiliated you so much. Don't you want to take revenge? That Shiyu, he is just a foundation establishment stage like you. You should have what he has too. Don't you want a revenge?" Tongbing's breathing stopped suddenly. He suddenly turned his head with his mouth closing and opening without making a sound, but there was a scorching light coming from his eyes. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.